This is the Roborock Saros 10R, a featured-packed high-end smart vacuum with a few world's first features not seen in any other smart vacuum yet. And it is now my new favorite smart vacuum of 2025. So without further ado, let's jump in the video and see what this is all about. First off, I want to thank Roborock for sending this out to me for a full, honest review. But I do not allow any other types of sponsorships on any of my channels. If you guys are brand new here and love unsponsored content, hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, hit that like button. Truly appreciate it. Now, this is pretty fantastic. I have a lot of positives. I do have one minor con, which I'll definitely mention towards the end of the video, so definitely stay tuned for that. But being one of the best smart vacuums out there on the market, it comes in at a hefty price, just like most other flagships that this competes with. So you'll have to ask yourself if that price is worth it or not. I gotta tell you, when I first got this, I was quite surprised how thin this is. It is a full-size flagship, and it's the thinnest smart vacuum I've ever tested that's full size. Don't get me wrong, I've done some mini robots, but this is the thinnest full-size vacuum I've tested to date, coming in at 3.14 inches thin, or about 7.98 centimeters high. Super thin. And I noticed right away that there is no LiDAR sensor on the top, which is completely unusual. Every other flagship out there has that big, ugly bump on top that has the rotating LiDAR, where the Roborock 10R has a industry-first dual transmitter solid-state LiDAR that does not use that big, ugly bump. Instead, it has sensors on the front and on the back, and it has this 3D time of flight sensor that can map your house just as fast and well, if not even better. And I know this is just a spec you probably don't care about, but what you will care about is how thin this is. And being so thin, it's able to get under and into places where other vacuums cannot. And that definitely puts this one ahead of anything else out there on the market. In addition, this has something called Star Sight navigation, which Roborock always had decent obstacle avoidance, but this thing is almost 100% in its obstacle avoidance, even in pitch darkness, because it does have a light on the front. It did kind of touch the pencil a little bit, as you can see here in the video, but it did know it was there. It just kind of brushed up against it, but avoided everything else, all the pet feces, the wires, and everything bigger. I only test the small stuff because that's what most vacuums have trouble with. Obviously, it's shoes, cups, that kind of thing, no problems. And I would say this is one of the best obstacle avoidance robots out there on the market. And when it came to vacuuming performance, it did just as well as any other flagship out there. Now, they don't readily put out their pascals of suction power, but this thing is up there with the best of them. A lot of these companies are trying to outdo each other with this Pascal number, PA number. And in the real world, I think it's after like 8 or 10,000 pascals, you're not going to see better results in the real world. Obviously, if you're doing a scientific test, you might get better results, but in the real world, once you hit that limit, you're not going to get better suction out of your vacuum. But I digress. When it came to actually vacuuming, it did a terrific job. Most of the stuff that I have in my house are low pile carpets. And the nice thing is, inside the app, you can tell it to leave behind the mopping pads if you want to. Or if the mopping pads are on because you're doing dual cleaning, it will actually lift up those mopping pads so the carpet does not get wet. In addition, if you have medium to high pile carpets, the chassis will lift up a little bit just to make sure that they don't get wet, which is really nice. That not only the mops can lift up, but the chassis itself, which I'll talk more about in a moment. And talking about mopping, this thing is horrific at mopping. Now, it doesn't have the latest and greatest, the roller mopping, but to be honest, the rotating mopping heads do pretty well in most use cases. And this has the flexi arm, so it's going to push out that right mop so it gets up against the edges, and then it'll pull back in that mop when it's doing the center of your rooms. This also has the flexi arm brush head that extends out in corners. So you can see here, it got every little bit in my testing here. So no dust or dirt will build up in corners. And this also has a liftable brush head. So if you do want to do mop only, not only will the brush head, the main brush head lift up so it will be able to mop, but that brush arm will also lift up. So all you're doing is mopping and nothing will be sucked into the vacuum. It's just mopping and soaking up into the mopping pad. So this is really cool. It has multiple things that it can lift up. It can lift up the side brush, the main brush, the mopping pads when it goes over carpet. In addition, this has the chassis lift. So if you have a transition that you have between rooms that's a little bit higher than your main floor, that's able to lift up about 4 centimeters if it's a double layer threshold. Now, if it's single layer threshold, they say about 3 centimeters, but I did test it around about 2.5, and it had trouble. And then when I put a second one on there, it was not able to, even though it was under that 4 centimeters. But when it was just a single one, about 2 centimeters, it got right over without any problems. So just be aware if you're pushing that limit, you might have a little bit of trouble. Nevertheless, this is really cool to see. I've seen other similar vacuums that have some type of lifting mechanism, but it's usually like an arm or a second wheel. This one actually lifts up the entire chassis. I did notice sometimes it would do the front and then it would lift up the back. So it can do the front and the back separately, which is really cool. And I did test this with a ramp. It didn't have any ramp features built into the app, unlike some other vacuums I've tested out there. But I was kind of able to get it working by putting a threshold at the beginning of the ramp and then one at the bottom of the ramp. Sometimes it did get stuck and it didn't quite lift in the right places. And since it's a very low mopping heads, it did get stuck and sometimes it would pull the ramp. I would love to see it to have a ramp feature and be able to lift up those mopping pads a little bit higher. But then again, this is a feature they don't really offer. And it's just something that I'm trying out on my own. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And then when it's all done cleaning, it will go back to the base station, wash the mopping pads, and use hot air to dry them so don't start growing bacteria and stinking. It'll suck in the dust and debris into the dustbin. The base station has a pretty large water tank and a dirty water tank that you will have to fill up and empty out. And it doesn't use a ton of water, which is really cool. But those are things that you can adjust in the app. And by the way, this app is full featured. There's so many different settings that you can customize. You can have multiple maps. So if you want to bring the vacuum up to a different level, you'll be able to switch to a different map, which is really cool, which I do from time to time. This also has Matter support. So if you're a smart home lover like myself and want to bring your smart vacuum into your smart home platform of choice that supports Matter, you can do so. I did notice in my main platform, which is Apple Home, it's just very basic controls. You don't have customization where you can have your smart home tell it to go to one certain room. Unlike the built-in voice assistant, Rocky, that you can use, you can tell it to go clean a certain room. But it's really nice that it does support Matter, and hopefully in the near future, Roborock will be able to have that feature where you can tell your smart home assistant to go to one room. Now for my minor con, I hate to be nitpicking here because I absolutely love this smart vacuum. But on their website, they have something called ModernDayTech technology that supposedly adapts to every mess. Now, in most cases, if you have a liquid spill somewhere, you have to do a mop-only selection in the app. But this ModernDayTech technology supposedly can detect different types of messes and will adapt appropriately. But in my testing, unfortunately, when it saw a liquid, it still vacuumed it up. It still had the brush arm down, where in a normal mop-only mode, it lifts up that side brush lifts up the main brush, turns off the vacuuming, and it just mops. So this dirt technology did not work in my testing, unfortunately. And I was really looking forward to seeing the very first vacuum that was able to detect liquids and go into a liquid only, mop only mode. But unfortunately, it did not work in my testing. So I would love for this to work, but unfortunately, it does not. But otherwise, this thing is the best smart flagship out there on the market today. Absolutely love it. With the first dual transmitter solid state LiDAR, so it doesn't have that big ugly bump on top. Has awesome navigation, obstacle avoidance, has that lifting chassis, lifting brush arm, lifting mopping pads, lifting main brush, which by the way, the main brush is that duo divide brush, which prevents tangles from pet hair or long hair that you might have laying around or strings that might be laying around. It works quite well by sucking in all the hair to the center, and then it has that suction hole right there in the section. Nothing gets tangled up. So all in all, this is an awesome smart vacuum I can highly recommend for you. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, make sure you smash that like button. Let me know what you love about this and what you don't down in the comments below. I'll also leave affiliate links, which doesn't cost you anything more, but definitely helps out the channel. If you want more information or pricing, definitely check out those links in the description, or I'll also put a YouTube shop in which if you haven't checked out YouTube shopping yet, that's definitely an awesome place to check out in addition to my normal links in the description. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you guys on the next one.